Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. And today, we are going to be illuminating as much as we possibly can on this whole BD, NA, NK, Dragon Fam situation that has been recently resurfaced with the start of HULKSDEN's video claiming that members, however many, of BDO, Chisgule's Alliance, were making claims that NA or any members of NA that were either previously from NK or otherwise were saying that they were betrayals and a betrayal alliance. And we are going to essentially start off by not only reacting to Chiz's recent video in some parts, we're not going to go through the whole thing, and then I'm going to show you clips from other videos, screenshots, and some testimonials that I got from people I reached out to summarize and see if we can just get to the bottom of this. So I've spent so far about 2.5 hours of just doing a little bit of investigation, and I'm just going to share with you what I have uncovered, and then I'm going to answer the big question for you all at the end, which is, why were they actually betrayed? And was there any justification to it? And could Chisgule possibly have been right all along? Stay tuned. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up because it helps out a lot. Okay, let's go ahead and get right into it, you sad sack of plebeians that I obviously love so much. Don't hurt me.
Like drama, but there's been no shortage of it for me in Call of Dragons after we got betrayed in the most public way possible, with the most public agreement of alliance possible. We were betrayed by the Dragon family, and this led to a long string of weirdnesses where those individuals went on to be very vocal haters of me and my group. And because of that, some number of people bought into the hatred, because to be an outsider, it's hard to tell which person is the idiot. And I've always been taught never argue with an idiot because it's just so hard to tell from an outside perspective who is wrong and who is right. So I'll give you a piece of evidence today that should just make it really clear how stupid these haters are. And the thing that I want you to try to understand, okay, is basically we got betrayed. These guys did this thing, and the only option for themselves is to paint us as the bad guy.
I wonder if the idiot comment was slightly in remark to Hulk, or if that was just more of a general, because obviously he didn't name any names. Just random thought. Continuing.
Because they either have to accept they were the bad guy for betraying, or they could try to flame us and get other people to believe it. And unfortunately for the Call of Dragons community, a bunch of people bought into the hater hype. And it's all lies. But they bought into it, and they're spreading it, and the truth is inevitable. And today is one of those videos where I bring forth the truth yet again. Not that I haven't done that before. And the haters will continue to deny it because they have no choice but to double, triple, and quadruple down on their strategy. Because at some point, the people who are looking in on this drama are going to go, man, this is really dumb. What the heck is happening? And they're going to realize that all those haters that they bought into the story of, they were lying to them. They were wrong. And that makes them, in turn, wrong as well for having believed it. At some point, people are going to figure out that I'm just pointing to things that have happened already in Rise of Kingdoms for years. We're just years ahead of what's happened here. I have inevitability on my side, not because I'm an oracle or I can see into the future, but because A, we were genuinely wronged, and B, we've seen how these things play out in the past. So this is just going to play out, and history will prove me right on these things, because I'm not the one who's being proven right. I'm just pointing to things that any Rise of Kingdoms player can point to and would know. So here's the evidence, all right? Here is the big evidence. And the thing that bothered me is that I was accused of basically saying that anyone that has betrayed me in the past is forever unforgivable, which is actually untrue. In fact, in Rise of Kingdoms, I just allied with a group that had badmouthed me in the past. And that they even tried to do it again last season. That's right. So, you know, look, like, there's a bunch of things we need to talk about, but enough of the sort of talking about the evidence. Here's the evidence, okay? So, Silver Sword is a member of the Blood Fam, and he reached out to Bassi. I don't know how to actually, Basai. I don't know how to pronounce his name, and I actually feel.
Okay. So the first one here, and we'll be kind of clipping things. I just wanted to allow the introduction of his summary to elapse so we can kind of get into now the clips portion. So here, this is Silver Sword saying, so as a former R4 of NA, you attest that NK did betray BDO and at another point even betrayed DNS, the group that they betrayed BDO with, and that as the R5 of Gen alliance that was in a war camp with BDO, NA reached out to you at the start of the season to betray BDO and cause chaos in our starting zone. Basai reacts and says, correct, in S1 Plus, DNS betraying BDO gave us the dragon, and by right, the victory. And yes, as King of Gen, I got contacted after matchmaking to potentially betray BDO in the back of it comes to fights in Zone 1 or more in the last season for Point 2. Okay, it should be very clearly stated here that Basai says betraying, right, is that he's not saying that he is privy and is aware based on this, right? Now, keep in mind, I'm just talking about the first sentence here. He's saying that because they betrayed, it allowed BDO, it gave us the dragon and by the right the victory. In the second line, we get, as King of Gen, I got contacted after matchmaking to potentially betray BDO. Now, this does not apply for, based on what's written here, right? Now, he says that NK did betray. He says, as former R4 of NA, you attest that NK did betray BDO. So I guess technically you could say in this point that, okay, maybe it just would have been nice to see that written, but I understand that it was prefaced by Silver in the beginning. So then stating that betraying, right, DNS betraying, and keep in mind, he says DNS betraying, it doesn't say NK betraying. And then the second line is, okay, as King of Gen, I got contacted after matchmaking to potentially betray BDO in the back, right? Now, again, no mention of NK, even though that is what Silver said. So could it just be could we lead that into believing that, okay, he's saying this from the position of being an NK? Okay, sure. But it's just not clear enough based on some of the wording, right? And I'm not trying to say that what Basai's saying here is incorrect or wrong. I'm just simply saying as an objective reader, it just would have been nice if there was like very clear clarification, meaning instead of asking so many questions, ask one question, get an answer, ask another question, get an answer. It makes it easier to discern specifics when you are focusing on one topic point and you discuss that to conclusion, and then you move to the next topic point, right, or next question. So I just wanted to state that for the record. But again, right, that is what Chiz is showing off, and we're going to dive into that, right? Now, this doesn't mean, like I said, that what Basai is saying is correct or incorrect. We're going to dive a little bit more into the weeds here. Now, let's go to 1046, which I think is probably the next big piece here. Oh, actually, hang on. Where's my thing from his? Oh yeah, we want to show off. I believe it's I don't know if he shows off a screenshot here, but we're going to go here. Yeah, so we're going to go here to team formation, and then we'll get into the next video.
I keep saying that people that are BDO detractors keep outing their lack of understanding of reality. You can't Diplo a win in a mode that doesn't have Diplo with allies and enemies. In other words, there was not really Diplo in this KVK format, Dragonfall. There's just team formation. You form your team, and then you get matched with a team, but that's out of your control. Now, I covered this in a separate video, that the one and only strategy that makes sense for a group like ours that wants to find hard fights is to make the biggest, baddest team we can, hoping we get matched against another big, bad team. And in my opinion, I love the allies we have, and I think...
Okay. So I just want to focus on a little bit of that first part where he says like you really can't Diplo. And this has been stated before. But technically, and I've talked about this, so I'm only going to briefly state this one, is that technically you can do Diplo. It just is it likely that you're going to see people or Kingdom reps, KVK diplomacy reps, go and get into a private Discord server and everyone's going to sit there and chop it up before the team up phase starts? That's a lot of work, right? Because you have to go off of everyone in the pool and get everyone together, share some stats, share some data, and then people have to discuss and say, okay, well, if we want to have if we want all the teams to be basically close in power and as close as we possibly can in 60 mil up to, all the way up to 200 mil plus players and have kind of a nice spread there. That's something that everyone would have to get together on and discuss and then come up with, okay, who are we going to try and team with? And then obviously, going through some of those other additional X factors or intangibles on, who has bad blood with whomever, right? Obviously, you have to work some of those things out. But it is possible. It just would take a lot of work. Okay, next one we're going to talk about is the small YouTuber portion.
Right. It's also pretty disappointing for small YouTubers when they pick fights with bigger YouTubers. Like, they just don't understand what they're doing. And, you know, even in collaborating with bigger YouTubers, like small YouTubers just generally don't understand how that goes. Myself included. Like, for Squad Busters, I was looking to do collaborations with some bigger YouTubers. Those were opportunities I could have pursued more aggressively, and I could have done specific things to lock those in. I didn't. It was on me. But the point that I'm getting at is, like, the perspective of a small YouTuber, like, they can't even begin to understand the perspective of a bigger YouTuber, right? Like, there are exceptions, but there's a reason why a small YouTuber is a small YouTuber and a bigger YouTuber has gotten to be a bigger YouTuber. And it's because they understand more of the game of YouTube, right? And a part of the game of YouTube is managing the drama and, like, picking the right drama to get involved in. The right kind of drama to get involved in my opinion, is... why is it even drama to say, like, we got betrayed? We did.
So the comment I just want to make there on where I think Chiz is coming from, and this is how I look at it, is that if I was a big YouTuber, right, it might be easy to say, yeah, I would love to go and work with a bunch of smaller YouTubers. And I think that it really just kind of comes down to, one, the amount of time that you have, and can you fit something like that in your schedule? But then two, and probably more importantly, is there some level of value that a smaller YouTuber is giving? For example, do they have a unique perspective on the game that isn't shared, but maybe is getting some traction, but it's not shared by maybe the larger populace or other larger base of creators? Two, have they produced some unique piece of content that is just very interesting? It's very intriguing. It's something that I'd love to kind of go over with them and have a discussion about. Three, is there something that is there some other kind of added value that they can bring? Because usually if you're a smaller creator, it's not as though you're going to bring a bigger creator more views, more subs, to where they'll be able to have some kind of, like, financial ROI, right? Or growth ROI, or some level of a value ROI return on their time, their brand, their likeness that they're investing into however much time with you, right? So and again, I'm only just stating a couple things here. So I can understand it from that perspective. Now, obviously, if Chiz is referring to something beyond that, then okay. I'm just going off what I think it could be. Now, obviously, I've done a recent collab with Chiz where we sat down for a little over an hour and we talked about the state of the game for Call of Dragons. Personally, I thought that was a unique opportunity, not only for Chiz, but for myself. And when I look at Chiz specifically, I think, okay, well, how often does he do those specific and particular types of content where he does something that's more long form, it's more in-depth, more detail-oriented, where he's really getting into the weeds about the game and not just kind of talking about what's new, progression-based content, heroes, events, a new update, something that was announced, getting into war, but really getting into what I think is the other large part that goes into these games, which is like the day-to-day life cycle of players that play, alliances, kingdoms, etc. And that was, I thought, a fantastic conversation that we had, really just sitting down and kind of going back and forth, winging it for a large portion, and just talking about what really interests us and what we think are areas of the game that can improve, areas that impact a player's day-to-day playing experience, and more. And to me, I thought that was a unique ad, right? An option where people can see Chiz in a different light. And I thought, based on, again, me posting it, I can only imagine how many views it might have got if Chiz posted on his channel. I'd have to imagine more than what I got. But I felt that the amount of people that watched it, there was a decent traffic or amount of views, and also the feedback that we got and the likes to dislike ratio was great. People really enjoyed just him and I sitting down and having a discussion about broader topics, but that are also equally important to the community. And so, again, I just wanted to kind of state where my thought process was behind how I felt going into the collab, and then what the result was of the collab and the feedback that we got afterwards. Okay, let's go into this last one. I think is okay. I think this one or two.
Group performs now that they've got no deeply favorable situation that they can sort of hide behind, as was created last season. They got to fend for themselves along with everybody else. We all got to fend for ourselves. So we're in the rightmost side over here, 41 and 286. maybe we'll have a chance to fight them in this zone over here, right? Could be a good time if they choose to on here, subscribe.
Yeah,
I would
we're seeing it to the
genuinely
end now.
like for this drama to be over. Don't listen to the haters spewing the nonsense that they are spewing. They're only going to ultimately make a fool of you when you go and believe them. And like, I don't know how many times I need to put forward evidence, right? And people keep.
Okay, so we're going to stop it there. And now we're going to get into, again, this is a screenshot of what was shown, but just kind of taken out of the video. And again, I'll have links to the videos that I'm referencing as well, which I think there's 3 that we're going to be looking at today. Okay, the next one is we're going to go back and we're going to look at a video here that was posted on August 12th, 2023, right? So this is over a year ago. We're talking a year and 4 months at this point. And there's a couple important line items that I want to go through. So starting with this agreement that you can see here by Sean. This was the diplomacy rep for the Dragon Fam / DNS and NK, from what I've heard. And this is what has been told to me by at least a few people. And so from that, let's start with, I want to go to 1046. This is going to be the first part that we're going to listen to where Chiz has some stuff to say. So we'll just go to 41, right? Boom. And start.
Anything that's not here is implied. And anything that is implied, if there is a miscommunication, should be discussed. But that is exactly what the Dragon family did not do. But I'm not there yet, because you see there's more lore here that you need to know about. Because although Sean was really interested in this agreement, and a group of Dragon family members were interested in this agreement, there was another group of Dragon family members that were very opposed to making this agreement with us. They just wanted to run us into the ground, and they just wanted to conquer. And that group of people split off from the Dragon family. They joined their own sort of group and formed their own third party within Server 32. Okay? So there were the Blood family haters that made themselves separate and left Dragon family. I want you to remember this, because those Blood family haters can go on in this season to ultimately drive the Dragon family, I think, to sort of push to betray us, which is what has happened. Now let's get into what's happened this season.
Okay, so I just wanted to allow for him to give an opportunity to share some. There's a lot more here, and I'll fill in as appropriate. Essentially what happened is that Sean was the primary Diplo rep for those alliances that was in a discussion with Chiz and Duz of BD. Now, Chiz does mention there was 2 other people that they did speak with, and I think it was mentioned that they might have talked to them on WeChat. But Sean was the primary person, the go-to person that essentially spoke the most English and made it obviously the easiest for them to communicate back and forth. You can see here that we're not necessarily going to focus on Season 1. We're really going to be focusing more on what was said here in Season 2. Both families share its roots in 32, so we will be allies against other potential threats in other servers. Below are some of the agreements both. 1, there will be no invasion of each other's starting zone. 2, Zone 3 is open for contest for both family to battle it out. Losing side gets 33% of the season rewards and 33% Dragon Border. Winning side gets 66 and 66. In the event that the outside threat is too great and both family have to focus most of its effects against common enemies, season end rewards will be rediscussed and be split more evenly. We think it's important to develop a long-time relationship with the Blood family because both of our existence ensure that both side is not bored to death with no one to fight. Now, this is important. We're probably going to refer to this a couple times and at the very end. And also ensure that Server 32 will be a dominant server for future seasons to come. So not only are they thinking about what is happening now in the present, but hoping and planning for the future a number of moves down the road. So from now on, please treat each other with respect. Toxic behavior towards our neighbor will not be tolerated. And I believe from what Chiz said, this was the draft, and he says final version, so I imagine this is going to be the write-up that Sean shares with Dragon Family. Okay, now let's go into 1150, which to me I felt was a massive part here. Actually, I'm just going to let him continue right from here.
We're getting to like the starting line of the betrayal, and I know this takes a while, but the context really does matter. The first thing we need to talk about with what happened in this season is how it started, because this season did kick off with a bang. Because the Dragon family had 2 or so alliances, and we had, I think at the time, somewhere between 4 and 6 alliances worth of players. The Dragon family took 1 starting zone over here. We took 2 starting zones for the Blood family, which is something that in hindsight, I think we would only take 1. And we kind of forced the other 3 servers to all be in the Burning Lands, which kind of sucks. And in hindsight, I think we would, as a Blood family, only take 1 starting zone instead of the 2. But we offered the Burning Lands in like good faith. We were like, just take it. We're not going to fight you for it. And instead of just taking that agreement, they said, you know what, F it. We're going to invade your starting zone at the very start of the game. They tried to invade Sophrostia and did so in a sort of underhanded way. I don't take it personally, right? But they faked going to one zone and then actually all went into Sophrostia. We end up beating them, so they all end up going to Burning Lands anyways. But I mention that because it starts to build a negative relationship with the other 3 servers that were in this map with us, because now they kind of don't like us, and it's understandable. I mean, like, they're 3 servers stuffed into one starting zone, and they got to figure out how to be allies and fight both Dragon family and Blood family, okay?
All right, so we're going to pause here. There's a lot that Chiz just said there. But breaking this down, Chiz basically admits at this time, and in hindsight, that it probably wasn't the best start to do. And I have to believe that part of that is because that portion, right, it was initially agreed upon by them going to Sophrostia and then the other group going to, I believe it was Zoland, that was mentioned to me. But essentially, each family with BD and Dragon, or Blood and Dragon, would each start in one starting zone. That's the most important piece to take away here. That was what initially was agreed upon and mentioned. Now, that, from what I understand, was not shown in any writings or any screenshots that I could locate or find for at least a few of the people that I've asked so far. However, if something like that does come to light, I'd be very curious to see myself. But because of that, part of me feels like, okay, well, maybe that's the reason at this moment where Chiz feels like, okay, you know what, if I'm looking back on this for how this played out, because again, they're kind of already end of season at this point, or close to it. Again, this is S1 plus, right? So this was the first KVK coming out of Home Kingdoms back in the day, before we had Home Kingdoms, right? This is where Home Kingdoms basically forced everyone in that Home Kingdom to go into the KVK, and there was no Home Kingdom to go back and forth between. So that happens. The Dragon family that he says ends up, however many of them, try to invade Sophrostia. Now, keep in mind, they initially agreed by Sean that they would not invade each other's territory. So technically, even though Chiz doesn't mention it here, they would have actually broken the agreement first, based on timelines that I have seen so far from what people have shared. If there's something else, would love to see it, but if I'm going off timelines, if I'm going off what Sean said, neither side would break into each other's side. Now, it also wasn't stated, as I mentioned, that you could not go into a second starting zone. Again, from what we've seen, that was not stated. I haven't seen anything mentioned there. Given that, technically, Blood family would not have actually broken any part of the original agreement unless there was something beyond what Sean stated that was agreed to that we just haven't seen, right? That Chiz does and whoever else may have been involved in. And so if that's the case, the first people to actually break the agreement would have actually been the Dragon fam, based on what we've seen so far. Then we end up getting the, right, they do the invade, they move to the other Zone 1, and now let's go to 1940. This is going to be the next one, which will kind of go here to maybe 32.
Come back, and you'll have half the territory in Calcha, we'll have half the territory, and then we can duke it out. And what they agreed upon, by the way, was not to destroy a specific fort in Calcha. And if that fort were to come under attack, that would immediately end the exercise in Lorcan, because then we were in danger of losing so much territory in Calcha that it would be unrecoverable, okay? So what do you think happens is, of course, that treaty was broken at the very earliest opportunity. So right...
Okay. And again, he's referring to NK at this point, right? So we go back to the screenshot. Oh, God, hang on. It must have only been up for a moment. There we go. So he says, haha, against 33, Thanks. Just to make everything clear, 4 days of the grace period, NK will at max push up to the AF of BDO so that we can fight again. Yes, sir. Then we fight until Zone 3. You guys are also a great fighter. Was fun fighting you. Then I don't know. WTF, we're going to do. The entire server wants to kill us. Haha. Also, I don't know. Okay. So essentially, you see everything, right? Does leave our territory up to the AF for BDO. I don't care if you burn everything else, right? So I imagine this is just a quote or something like that that maybe this social media platform utilizes. But just stating that NK, again, who was stated was essentially some members from either DNS or the Dragon family that separated to form NK potentially with anyone else. And so if you want to say they're connected or not connected, right, that's up to you. But what did we see this season was that NK and DNS or Dragon Fam right eventually fought against BDO, right? Even if it may have just started at different intervals from the beginning of the season of that KVK. Okay, next let's go to 24 is where we're going to go here. And I think we'll start, boom, boom, here we go. If it plays. You can do it, Betsy.
In Dragon Fam, the exercise is over. Stop attacking. We need to extract our players. We need to secure Calcha. We're going to lose Calcha. So thank you for the fight. This is over. We're going to Calcha now. See you later. And they kept pushing and zeroing players anyways. And we were like, what are you guys doing? We told you the exercise is over. We're not defending anymore. Yeah, people are supposed to leave. Yeah, it's on them that they're still on territory. But this was a surprising change of direction that a lot of people didn't expect. So what are you doing zeroing our players in Lorcan now? What a mess, okay? Let me show you that conversation. Okay, so here's the messaging. And I say, hey guys, what's going on? NK betrayed and we had to pull from the zone to deal with them. Does inform your team we were officially pulling from the zone, and yet you're still charging forward and zeroing our players. Can you help me understand what you, as our allies, are doing while NK is fully betraying the non-attack agreement? And I say, just to be extremely clear, from my perspective, we went out of our way to do this skirmish under the agreement that NK would not push.
And I imagine
you were responsible, which they were, for saying it's fine they can have Lorcan. It's not about the territory. It's about the agreement they made with us. And zeroing our players, even though we've shifted to the NK front. And he says, hello, brother. Sorry for the late reply. We were in Roots of War.
And to be clear, at this point, they're just trying to get a response for what was happening in Lorcan, right? There was something that was agreed to fight it out there up to a certain point. And NK obviously, or it looks like NK pushed. I think DNS might have been there too as well, so it might have been the two, right? It says right, just to be extremely clear, right, when NK engaged, our skirmish ended. The progress as of the moment in time indicated we were the winners, and we should have had an opportunity to extract our members before you charged forward to claim the zone. But you're not charging forward to claim the zone and zeroing our players, even though we shifted to the NK front, which was over there down in Kaltia, where NK was pushing in from, I believe, burning lands. Right, and then it's, okay, Darth says, really don't know what happened, but we need to talk with DS in voice. They have R4 who can speak English, right? Okay, and then let's see if we get something else here. We get, and even burning was here. I don't know if that's the same burning that I'm aware of. I will share screenshots for you here in a moment, right? So just kind of sharing what happened in the conversation, but there just wasn't a reply. Maybe there was at a later point, but just not one there in that moment. Okay, so now let's go and let's look at, what did we look at? 26. Okay, we looked at those screenshots already. Now I want to go to 3615 is where we're going to go to for the next one here. And we'll go a little before 2 as well. We'll go like 3602.
Great warriors from the Dragon family, like King C, and I tried to understand what happened. And the best thing I could understand, by the way, of like what the heck happened is that they feel like we did recruiting that was against the agreement. But we have evidence that Dragon family was recruiting too. So it must not be against the agreement. It's a hypocritical perspective, because how do we know Dragon family was recruiting when we were recruiting? Because we recruited people who said they were actively being recruited by Dragon. Like, I have all the evidence that they were recruiting at the same time we were recruiting. And I don't even know if this is their official complaint, because they still won't tell me the official complaint. By the way, I have more conversation. I'll show it to you. So Dragon is accusing us of a crime that not only is there not a clause in the agreement that talks about recruiting, but also they themselves are guilty of. I mean, what the heck? Let me just jump to the conversation with Max, where he continued in Discord. Remember, it's like Friday at this point. It's been many days. I've been trying to have this conversation. I even spent hours of my time writing this into a document to try to explain the situation. And I say, is this Max of the Dragon family? He says, yeah.
Okay, and we'll just fast forward a little bit on this part, just so we can get to some replies here. He says, sorry I was sick and didn't have time, no problem, I'm better now. Yes, I am, but I need to consult with our whales and NK's whales, right? So remember, he says from Dragon Fam, so it's Max is kind of doing both. This kind of leads us into what we were saying before, how Sean's position was kind of being Diplo for both of the alliances that I had heard, and so you kind of see this person doing the same thing. Right, so essentially it's funny to me because it kind of... It side on a side mission of confirming that even though some of these people that split from Dragon Fam and made NK were still basically connected and tied at the hip, and they had some points of context that represented both. It's just an interesting side note, right? I don't know if anyone's caught on to that or if that entices anyone or makes it feel like, okay, why? I don't know. Okay. He says, this is not something I can decide alone, and BD is against our agreement to some extent. Okay, let's continue. So, we're going to consult, right? Nothing here. Okay, here's where I think we get into a little bit more. He says, I hope you will not deny that BD violated the agreement because it is very unreasonable. What BD did is visible to everyone, and denying this will make our conversation impossible. Playing dumb doesn't solve anything. It just keeps the war going. Of course, if BD likes war so much, the better, and so do we. If BD likes, we can keep our war going until S2 is over. So far, the response has not actually stated anything that specifically clarifies on what Chiz does and BDO felt that they did that would have broken the agreement, right? So there's nothing here that Max has stated specifically, just kind of, broad, vague statements. And let me see, I don't know if he pushes the conversation down a little bit. Oh, he does. So he says, right, and I need to reiterate that neither DS nor BD violates the agreement if they both violate the agreement at the same time. In this case, both pitchers violate the agreement, but the one who violates the agreement first is the sinner. I just love how there's like a little extra kind of salt that's thrown there at the end. He's like, oh no, we both did. It's like, it comes back full circle, right? It's like, oh, it's kind of what Chiz said in the beginning. Where he doesn't really know exactly what the reason is, but, maybe if it's the recruiting, we did it, they did it, he has screenshots that they did it, but then Max hits you with like, oh yeah, we both really did it, but it's who did it first. And it's just, I don't know, it's funny. It's funny, I think. Okay. So let's see here if we get...
See a priority.
Oh, hang on. Let's see here if we get anything else on the screens. I think he shared something else. Both did. Okay. Max awake for another hour. I think this is where it stops. Yeah. And then we get some screens that were shown here. And I'll go top right here. I think that probably makes it easier. Where you could see, this is some people that were talked to about being recruited, right? Someone says, hey, what's up? Did DS ever try to recruit you prior to the start of the season? Not a trick question. It's for Chisgule. I was offered a spot indirectly through the player that went to DS. You guys were first, though. Right, so meaning that, okay, they reached out, and then someone from DS reached out, so maybe this person was a neutral party, possibly. Someone says big white, yeah, him. Did you ever show the screenshot of DS offering him a spot? No. And then where do we have, right? Most of your alliance went there, though, didn't they? 2 to 3 officers, the old leader's account. Now, I don't know exactly what alliance this is. I imagine it's someone that either it maybe is NK or is maybe just another alliance there, but it doesn't appear that this is someone who specifically was in DS or in BD, just more of a neutral party. And if that's the case, I don't really see what the problem there is. Hard to keep track of names, right? But some people were mentioned here. Now, did DS ever try to recruit you part of the season? Tinglin was the contact. They tried to recruit him, and I was going with him. Do you want the screenshot? Yes, and just give me a minute, but for the actual confirmation, you probably have to ask him. Tinglin speaks Chinese and was the one who was talking to DS prior to the merge. Okay, so again, some people that you could see here. I wish it was a little bit more clear, but again, that's what we got. Next one we're going to look at, oh yeah, so it's a screenshot. Okay, now, let's go to what I think is the next most interesting piece, right? And these are just some screenshots from those agreements, something that was mentioned there. Now, there's this interview that Gabe did where I think really illuminates a lot here. And then I'm going to get into some feedback that was shared with me by other players. But in this conversation, we see Shinchi interviewing Gabe, who was the R5 of NK at the time. Now, I don't know if Gabe was a part of the Dragon Fam, and then when they split, he just went there and became the R5, or was already placed as the R5, or was he a member or an officer, and then he worked his way up? I'm unclear on that part. But what we do know is that he was the R5, and you'll see him state that here in the beginning.
An independent alliance currently. So, Gabe, you're going to give us a little bit of a background of what happened in the end of last season and inside the server. So, what's up, Gabe?
Yeah, what's up? I need to introduce basically a bit of a background and kind
Yes.
of let you guys know what happened. So, towards the end of last season, NK previously was DH. We did have somewhat a management level disagreement with DS, so we decided to make our own alliance, like be on our own basically for the second season and see how it goes. We did not. Well, according to Chisgule, we were that part of the people that didn't want to be with BD or make an agreement with BD. So, but basically, before the season starts,
Gabe, hold on. Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
You kind of stutter. You're
Yeah, so short version here is that I guess as he clarifies this now, he was a part of the Dragon Fam, and then they left. But again, I don't know if he was a manager or a member of the position there. The next one I want to go to is going to be 225. So this is really important. We're just going to go forward a little bit.
very bored during the season and have nobody to fight with, and then season will be just most people quitting the game instead of people having fun fighting each other.
Okay.
Because if you split I think the problem was last season, if they pre-arranged the agreement or the season reward split before the Zone 3 starts, therefore kind of resulted in a lot of people just, the result is set anyway, so why bother? You don't try it anymore. So,
All right.
that resulted in like kind of the Zone 3 fight wasn't as epic as Zone 2, in my opinion.
Okay, so here in this case, you see Gabe basically mention that he's unsure if there was some prearranged agreement that was made in Season 1 that would have applied for Zone 3. Now, I don't know if he means Zone 3. I'm imagining because they're already through S1+, I have to I feel like we're leaning towards he's talking about S1+ here. But the most important part that I want you to focus on is that Sean, who was a part of he was the primary POC or point of contact for NK and DF, and then Max also was a secondary contact for both the Dragon Fam and NK. But with primarily Sean coming and mentioning and showcasing that agreement that was made, you could surmise that NK, by extension Gabe, their management team, and any players that was shared with, were aware of this. However, you hear Gabe saying that he is not aware of any prearrangement that was made at all between the two families. Okay, moving on, let's go to 320. We'll go a little bit before that.
Previously, a couple weeks before the Season 2 starts, both Dragon Family and then BD kind of announced their landing zone. So Blood Family wanted to land it in Sophrostia, and the Dragon Family landed in Solent.
Okay.
Well, which leave Dalaran and Burdenland empty at that point.
Okay.
But a couple of days before, like after the matchmaking was released, a couple of days before the Season 2 starts, the Blood Family announced they were also landing Dalaran.
Okay, the Blood Family. The Blood Family,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes. The Blood Family, because I was breaking off, probably. But yeah, they also announced they're gonna land in Dalaran. So, let me change this.
Okay, so Gabe confirms here that, and again, if they are, now I'm sure I could check this with Duz or Chiz at that point. I don't think that I don't think there's a high percentage chance that there's anything that's necessarily incorrect here, because you can clearly see that there's some BD people or BD alliances and BDO up here, BDO2, etc., that went there. And they also stated, Chiz also stated this for himself, right? That we already heard before that they went there. So this was stated at some point in time, regardless of the exact timeline that Gabe's referring to, that they then stated after the initial agreement that they were going to be going to Darlin. Now, how I view this is that if you are allies and you're supposed to be working together, why not split the territory? To me, this is obvious. This is so common beyond any level of logical, rational sense that it should have just been a given. Now, were there other X factors or intangibles that we're not privy to that factored into or made it seem based on those actions that Blood didn't want to offer that? Maybe, I don't know. But when I'm looking at this objectively, why wasn't the other half of Darlin offered to the Dragon Fam? If you're going in there, why can't they go in there? And then that way, you got one zone for the rest of the kingdoms. Even though, I mean, that's kind of rough in and of itself, that could have been an option. So again, I'm curious on that one there, because to me, that part, without more context, without more information, doesn't make sense at face value. If you are allies and you're supposed to be working together in the season, even if you fight, I mean, technically you guys could have had a fun fight in that zone 1 there. That just could have been like your guys' neutral zone 1 that you played out, right? I mean, there's a couple ways you could have done that. Okay, next one here we're going to go to is at 520, not 420. Stop messing with me. Here we go.
Okay, let me continue. What I was saying, I asked. Yeah, damn it. I was saying I discussed with Daz a little bit if it's possible for NK to landing Dalaran. He was like, then it's BD announced the region. It's not okay for NK to land in Dalaran. So we still chose Dalaran regardless. Ended up fighting BDO, which was fun. Yeah, and then we got our ass kicked. So we researched to Burning Land, because obviously at that point we cannot fight BDO with everyone of their alliance
Family.
there.
Who had Sophrostia?
Still also BD. BD was fighting 334. So BD a couple of days before they announced they have so many alliances, so they're gonna take both Sophrostia and the Dalaran.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So they wanted to. Wow. Okay.
They want 2 regions.
It also makes sense, right? Because they have a lot of players, but at the same time, like this is where the friction started.
Yeah. This is where the friction started, basically, and then also, I think 34, server 34 alliances ended up landing in Sophrostia.
Okay.
Okay. So at this point, you hear that he spoke with Duz, asked if they could get some land in Darlin. Duz advised them not to. So at this point, like when you look back at this, you wonder, right? Why? What was the reason here on why Blood Fam was able to get 2 starting zones to them? And obviously Chiz alluded to this as well. He says, looking back in hindsight, we probably shouldn't have done that. And part of that, I just think when you're when you have 2 giant, because you have to understand the size of this kingdom. At the time, 32 was massive. They were so big. And let me see if I have, I don't know if I do, but let me see if I have real quick. Let me see. Let me go to my master stuff here. Here we go. Let me just explain this to you if I can. Now, I'd have to probably show you this on alliances, but I don't think I can show it to you on kingdoms. Is this my master? What master is this? Top stats. Okay, yeah, good. I think we're okay here where I have alliances. All right. So let's go back to when things were like starting. Oh, here it is. So DNS. So here's DNS S22. Let's go back a little bit further here, and you see Blood. Okay, 32. And DNS from 32. Let me see. Can I go? When was this? This was done on June 10th of last year. Let me see if I can go back any farther, and do I have anything here from 32? Probably not, I think. Yeah, no. Okay, so 32 probably would have been around here. 13, maybe here. Okay, yeah. So here's one. So let me see if I see 32 on here. Here we go. So you see BDO, this is the first time they made my list, my top 25 alliance list across the entire game, right? This is going back May 2023. They were 1 and 2, or sorry, they were number 3 and number 6, right? At almost 4 billion power and the 3 billion power. And then you had another group here, BDM, which is at 1.7, almost 1.7 billion. This was in May. 1 month later, they go from 4 billion to about 3 billion, right, to 5.3 here, which is, again, 1.4 billion increase. And then you look at them at 3 here and 4.8. That's almost a 2 billion increase. That is massive over a month. And you have and they're the top 2 alliances in the game. This is how big 32 was. You have to understand the size. Look at this, even BDM. They had 3 alliances here that worked their way up. They were 1.7, and then they go to 2.7. They gained 1 billion power as a 3rd alliance there. 3 alliances in the top 17, and the top 2 alliances in the top 2 across the entire game. They were a massive kingdom around Global, right? Because 32 came out basically when Global hit. It came out right before Global launched, and then it went into Global, right, which technically would have made 33 the first official server post-Global launch. So 32 was kind of this hybrid where they basically created the kingdom right before Global release and then went into post-Global. So again, I just want to state that for the record because they are so massive that you have to kind of think about how are you going to fit them, right? In a KVK where they clearly are the strongest kingdom and have the 2 to 3 strongest alliances in that KVK in its whole, you almost have to kind of put yourself in this mind frame of, well, are the other kingdoms really going to give us a fight? Or is it better for us to maybe create fun war games to fight against ourselves, right? And/or do we maybe form 2 teams and then we split those alliances between those 2 teams? So like another way to maybe have done it is to say, well, BD will take 2 starting zones and then Dragon Fam will take 2 other starting zones and we'll split the other kingdoms between us and just do a fight. That actually could have been a great idea. I just wanted to set, again, probably got a little passionate there, but hopefully that at least explains some of it. Okay, let's go to about 7:15 is going to be our next one here, a little bit more forward.
For us until just after the dragon thing, but yeah, and 34 ended up lost to BDM, although I think majorly because BDM was trying to recruit their members at the beginning already. So when they landed, 6 of their T5 or something just joined BDM and started to fight against 34.
Oh, they flipped.
Yes, they flipped.
Where's the loyalty?
I think this was because
right, okay, so here Gabe is stating that some 34 T5s were recruited and joined BDM when BDM was in Sophrostia, BDO was in Doralin, right? You can kind of see the 2 splits there that they talked about with starting in 2 zones. These were their kind of top 2 alliances in 32, at least on the Blood family side. The next one is that let's go to 820, which I think is another really interesting part that shares a perspective of those that were in Burning Lands in a crowded starting zone 1.
Mm-hmm. And then they researched also together with us into Burning Land. So Burning Land is basically a huge clusterfuck.
It's crowded.
Yes, very crowded. Very, very crowded. To a certain point, you don't see a single node empty on the back.
Oh my
God.
God.
You cannot farm at all.
I think I saw that one in the comments.
And here from Gabe, he just really speaks to the overcrowding situation that was happening in Burning Lands and how it just wasn't ideal. And I think when we probably look back on this more in hindsight, along with a few of the suggestions that I've proposed, and I'm sure maybe other people may have talked about it at that time, like this kind of you could argue this could lead to a higher level of frustration where more of the other kingdoms could have just said, well, let's just work with Dragon and then go against the Blood family, right? Based on kind of where they got put in. And it was just the simple fact that Dragon maybe used that to their advantage of recruiting, or maybe it was other people that suggested it to Dragon, or NK started those discussions and then that led into Dragon, right? Because Blood family could have also worked with some of those other kingdoms and brought them into like Darlin, for example, right? where they weren't looking to have Dragon Fam go. I mean, obviously, there's a number of ways that this could have played out. Okay, the next one here is let's go to 850, because this is kind of a bit of a banger, I think.
This was not the entirety of like 34, 46, and 48 in Burning Land. It was also because a lot of 46 and 48 T5s, like their top players, just announced they're gonna join BD at when they landed. So at that point, after we researched, it was basically NK, and then plus some of the, do you know the name GD, which was.
So just to focus on there, he's stating, keep in mind, this was back when, like we talked about, the home kingdom got forced into the KVK. So your home kingdom basically disappeared. You didn't have a home kingdom at that point. It was invisible. So every player got moved to the KVK, and you could join other alliances and other kingdoms because there was a lot more fluidity and just a lot more kind of cross participation back then, at least in that regard. And so you could join another alliance for a season, but then once you went back to home kingdom, you would go back to your home kingdom. Or in the beginning, actually, I should be more specific in this part, you'd actually just go into the next KVK. So you never went back to your home kingdom. You basically started in season 1, which is your home kingdom, and once you got into KVK, S1+, you then basically just started this continuous rotation of going in back-to-back KVKs, and you never went back to your home kingdom because home kingdoms weren't reintroduced or introduced in the true sense until later on in the game's lifespan. So, again, you're joining these others, but then it's like, you may not be able to play with them again if they get matched with other people, and they didn't really have migration at that time, right, because of how early the game was. Okay, next one we're going to go to is 1020. And let's see here. We'll start 1011.
There is no cooperation or allegiance within the Blood group, right?
No, we didn't even try to make an agreement. And then when we landed, we just got attacked.
So here, Sean admits and says, Gabe, admits and says that there was not an agreement. There was no efforts that were made for any such agreement, for any conversation. Okay, letting us move on here to 1105, which I think is the next one that I want to look at. So we'll just go to about 11 here.
I think so.
Now, what was this agreement? Was it to be complete allies until the end, or is there certain conditions that you know of?
I don't know too much about their agreement. I think that agreement at the beginning was kind of,
neutral or
neutral, at least neutral to all the other. It's basically a free-for-all agreement, I would say. Okay. So, you don't ally with other people, but you don't also
mess. So they potentially have like a NAP, like a non-aggression pact with everyone until.
Yeah, so keep in mind, right, again, the agreement that we're referring to is the one that was shared here, right, from Sean, where it just says, right, there'll be no invasion, right, this is for Season 2, we have no invasion of each other's starting zone, Zone 3 is open for contest, which I imagine Zone 2 could potentially have been open for contest as well, even though it wasn't stated here, right, and then if the outside threat is too great, they'll basically just band together and fight against them. But you still see Gabe kind of doubling down here and saying that he's not aware of any agreement. This would have been an opportunity for him to say, well, I think there maybe was one or anything. So, again, is it, and we'll kind of get into some of those questions at the end, but this is just the kind of the second moment where he does reiterate, hey, I'm not aware of any agreement. Nothing was shared with me. I don't know of one. Right, this is just my best guess. Next one here, which is 1440, that we're going to share. So let's go here to maybe 34.
More elite. Yeah.
Yes. We have more top players.
So my question is there such thing as betrayal that happened during the season?
Well, it's hard to say. I think the major problem with the Dragon, although they didn't explain themselves well enough, I have to say, for them, based on last season, towards the last 4 weeks, everyone was just farming, because right after Zone 3, 2 days after Zone 3, the fight was over, and then people was farming for a month. People also towards the end, people already started to feel very, very bored of farming, especially even the whales, and then people who spend money. If you just farm, then
What's
not
the
much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what's the point? Especially if you look at Call of Dragons, it has like elixirs, and then where you can just use free healing.
Okay, so here, Shinchi asked him straight out. It doesn't really feel like there was a straight answer. It was just kind of more, okay, let's, I don't want to say deflect, but just kind of pivoted to touch on, well, what was the feeling for those on the other side, right, is where the answer was. And it almost makes it sound to me that from that pivot and talking about the feelings of the other side, that, and on top of that, there was no kind of diplomacy or conversation maybe up until that point, right, based on them not having any talks or agreements when they ended up going in to Darlin for that beyond the initial conversation he had with Duz, as far as it being a part of any agreement. And then you get to this point now, it almost just kind of feels like maybe this is a factor into the reason for like why the disagreement and or i.e. betrayal, if you want to call it that, happened. Again, just some of my thoughts. Next one let's go into is going to be 1719 that we're going to take a look at here. And we'll start a little bit before.
Of the map. So they, even though they are in Dalaran, they only go out the left side.
I see.
So they didn't try to go Forgotten Land at all. So which leaves Dragon to be even more bored. So another 4 months into this this map, season 2 or season 1 plus, they didn't even have one fight. So while we were fighting BDO, we were fighting the Blood family, and then they would basically have nothing else to do other than farming. So
I see. Wow.
pretty boring. So it's pretty boring for them at that point. Yeah, and then I don't know if it's true, but
I think he just kind of got into some rumors after there. But what I want to say here is this, to me, further doubles down on this idea that all of these factors, from the Duz snub, which they probably felt like, them going into Darlin, right? So that's 1. 2, them going, Blood family going into Darlin already, but then probably 3 and even before that, them announcing that they're going to go there, but then not offering for Dragon Fam to go there. And then 4, the fact that based on their positioning, they weren't going to be getting any action potentially until Zone 2 or worst case Zone 3. This just led them to basically kind of go down this path of having a boring season up until the FZ at the earliest, which it could have been, especially if they didn't fight them in Lorcan, right? So, and that's just because, right, they could have went from Zoland into Forgotten Lands and then west. So they would have went north and then west into Lorcan for that Zone 2. Okay, last one we're going to look at here, I think is, actually I got 2, we got 2120 is where we're going to go to next. If I'm able to. 20, let's go here. Dun, dun, dun. We'll start at 10.
Servers, whales move into you guys, because they were very good at, I like the term poach, but they were very good at poaching. But do you guys try to recruit some of the big guys also, or no? It's like,
so we didn't try to recruit them. In terms of the GD, they have some a couple also Chinese people were pretty close, were friends with me after we landed both in Burning Land. So after we both are forced into Burning Land, so we quickly become friends and then we fight them. So we sometimes jump back and forth.
okay.
There was one BD T5 that joined us. I wouldn't name him, but he joined us because he's upset with BD. I didn't try to recruit them.
He just joined. He didn't like what was going on.
Yeah, he basically had a fight to his BD, and then he really hates them with a passion at that point.
Okay, so Gabe says that there wasn't any recruiting on their part. Now, maybe he's just referring to NK, because we know that keep in mind, they said DS, or I think it was DNS or something like that, that might have done some recruiting in Chiz's stuff. So again, this could be a separate thing that Gabe is only referring to NK and not to anything within the Dragon fam. And so that could have been the case as well. However, I don't know if there was any accusations made from the Blood family towards NK, or if the Dragon fam was aware of the situation here that Gabe is explaining. So it kind of leads, at least it leans a little bit into that and gives more context to that narrative and point on, well, it kind of feels like a he said, she said, right? Was this a reason for why there was a betrayal that was done with any form of recruiting, right? Was there anything from NK where they reached out to people in the Blood fam or that were a part of allied alliances, right? Whether it's in 32 or other. Those are some of the questions we don't necessarily have answers to. I just wanted to at least show this part because it was, I felt, somewhat relevant to the kind of whole recruiting debacle that was being touched on for reasons on why there was a betrayal. The last one is, let's just go to 3248. And I thought this was like a really nice thing that was said. Well, at least a summary of kind of feelings, if you will.
Chisgule's video was trying to explain what happened from the Blood point of view, which they think it's everyone against them. But if you look at the other side, or if you just ask the players from the Burning Land, they were like, "It's hell no, our top T5s joined you, and then we just got left over, like shoved to this small area that nobody has like nodes to farm." So you know, it's their point of view. That's it. I think there's the difference, from different point of view.
All right. Now here's the thing:
Right, so essentially Gabe just sharing that it was just kind of living like a poor, right? We were living like a bunch of poors, essentially, in that area, and it just didn't make us feel good about, right, the potential PvP prospects as well. And I think that can be understood from people that are in that situation, which I can only imagine how maybe bad that felt, or just not as though we're going to be able, like, it maybe felt very demotivating and very disengaging, because especially if you have a bunch of people that are spending money and they're hoping to get some fights throughout a season, and now they're kind of finding out like, well, man, we might not be able to get fights until Zone 3, realistically, right? Unless we kind of go into Zone 2. And there was a part in Chiz's video that back then where that we did showcase some clips from, where he said that, the Dragon fam leadership had kind of came to them and begged for them to fight them and have some battles in Lorcan. And again, I don't know if there was any, because I haven't seen any screenshots for that, but obviously we know that they did fight in Lorcan, so maybe there is some truth to at least Dragon fam reaching out and saying, hey, could we fight in Lorcan? I think that's very believable based on what we've seen. Okay, that's it. Now, the last part I want to mention is just some comments from some people I reached out to. And this is going to be more of, again, me just sharing their feedback. I did get permission from these people to be able to use their names too as well. So the people that I heard from, and I'll just kind of read these based on how I have these. So I did reach out to Sapphire, who was a member of NK and OnePlus. She had mentioned that Gabe was about 80% of NK. Like, he was a very large active base and part of it. He guarded objectives until members had woke up and felt as though, and was just very active on the field. And so a number of people felt that when Gabe left, there were others that left, and that appeared to be kind of like the head of the alliance, or the head of the snake, if you will, that was chopped off. And that could have factored into kind of like what happened afterwards with, I know she had mentioned some people had left. But again, I just wanted to kind of give an impression there of Gabe's contributions to NK and kind of what it felt like for some people when he did step down. Now, I also reached out to Moopsy, who was an R4 of Blood Family in OnePlus. And I just asked him for some clarification here, which I thought was interesting. He said that, kind of doubling down on that, Sean was like the main Diplo for DS and NK. He could speak English, but wasn't native. I think he mentioned that he might have also spoke Chinese, or that may have been his native language or another. There was some drama within Dragon, and that's why NK may have formed. We also kind of heard that as well from Gabe on, some internal disagreements within management, right? So that seems to line up as well. That Sean, and I said, hey, do you think Sean and Gabe knew each other, right? Like, was there a likelihood that they spoke and they shared information with each other? Moopsy said it's very likely that they did. And I kind of tend to agree with that. because we're going to get to like some big questions here near the end. But I find it difficult for anyone to maybe sell me on this idea that they either did not know each other, they didn't speak, they didn't share information with each other, especially when you're a leader and you have someone who's doing Diplo for essentially both of the alliances. Then we have that he mentioned Gabe was at least one of the NKR5s during the split, but that the point of contact for anyone in that season to reach out to someone in NK usually was Gabe. Right, there was never anything publicly stated that Gabe and NK that they would fight against Dragon Fam, right? And you kind of heard it there too as well in some parts that we mentioned earlier, where it just felt like, okay, right, they'll still have conversations. There's still people diploing for both alliances. And then, right, the question was that he did mention that it was unlikely that Gabe did not know about the agreement with Sean when I had asked him. He did say that, Moosey did say that the agreement apparently was leaked by someone. So even more of a chance that Gabe would have seen it, because it was, I think someone, as he said, it might have been leaked in Tamaris or World Chat at that time. And then he gave me some thoughts saying that he felt as though they were looking for a reason to fight and betray Blood Family. And this was as DF. Right? So they used the recruitment thing as just that, like their lightning rod, if you will. Gabe did mention that Dragon Family, like we heard, was kind of bored out of their minds, and they were looking, right, and that they just kind of knew, like, if something didn't happen, it was just going to be a boring scene. I feel like all of these are indicators to me that would have led and would play more into this narrative of Dragon Family maybe looking for some kind of an excuse or a reasoning that they could use to betray Blood Fam, so that way it wouldn't be as bad or purely bad, if you will, compared to that of like, oh yeah, we just want to fight against you now, so we're just going to break this agreement, kind of a thing from happening, which probably just would have been easier for them to say instead of, maybe, again, and I'm not saying that's what happened, I'm saying that's how it looks based on everything I've seen so far. And then in Season 2, right, we know that BD had moved out 32, and then Season 2 plus DS had moved out later. And he also commented that he felt that DS, if they hadn't betrayed, that there was a chance that they would have died out, that their alliance would have died out in that season due to boredom, right? Or maybe migrated out earlier. Now, we get to lastly, my conclusion, and I think the big questions that we don't really know wholeheartedly the answers to, which is, one, did Gabe as the R5 of NK know about the agreement that Sean, as a representative, apparently, of both of those alliances made with Chiz and Duz from the Blood Family? And then two, what were really the reasons that Dragon and or NK claimed were broken in the agreement? Because from what we've seen so far, at most, for those two big questions, we're speculating. We are pulling everything we've seen, heard, and read, and just trying to come up with some kind of conclusion based on percentages. These are my thoughts. I'd love to know what you think. Again, I know we kind of ended up going down this like S1 plus back in the day rabbit hole that essentially stemmed from from HULKSDEN's video, and NA saying that BD called them betrayers, and then we kind of started going down a further rabbit hole, and I understand that probably most of this isn't really relatable to the first video, but if you find this history interesting, and you enjoyed this deep dive that is basically an hour plus long, then I'm going to be honest. At this point, I was not expecting for it to go that long. I had all my notes down on my timestamps. I felt like we let everything play out decently so you could hear the context in the clips that we were reacting to, but sometimes, you just get a long video. So hopefully maybe you enjoyed this as a podcast, and I'd love to hear what you guys think down below. That's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, I'll catch you later.